Welcome to the debate circle. My name is Stephanie Weshira. I am your host for the day, and the motion under dissection today is whether increased climate change impacts in Kenya are due to poor climate policies and plans implemented by the government, as opposed to general ignorance by communities. Proposing this motion, we have Moi Forces Academy, and on the opposition end, we have Jamhuri High School. All the best to the two teams. The first proposer, please take the stage.
Increased climate change in Kenya is due to the poor government plans and policies implemented as opposed to general human ignorance. My name is Wayne Dacia on behalf of Moi Forces Academy, and I'm here to strongly propound on the motion. Ladies and gentlemen, our country is facing profound food insecurity, climate crisis, environmental degradation, and loss of biodiversity. Why? My team and I are here to tell you. Ladies and gentlemen, there are terms in this motion that I am simply obliged to enlighten you on because they are very crucial. Climate change. This is the setting in of new weather patterns, the setting in of new weather conditions that deviate from the norm. Example, if you were probably to have rains, long rains on May, you will probably have them later in the year or earlier in the year, changing the weather pattern. Climate change impacts. This is the gist of the story. Now, this is where it gets interesting. What are these impacts? These are the problems we are left facing after the new weather patterns and the new weather conditions have set in. What problems am I talking about? I'm talking about drought. I'm talking about flooding. I'm talking about aridity and desertification. I'm talking about global warming. And it doesn't stop there. No, that's just the tip of the iceberg. These impacts dive down deeper to constrict the very backbone of our country, to constrict the primary sustenance of 60% of the population of Kenya. I'm talking about agriculture. Agriculture is our backbone since time memorial. And these impacts are crumbling our agriculture. Case in point, the current food insecurity we are facing in northeastern and eastern Kenya. By an article of the Daily Nation, it states that 3.5 million people are currently exposed to hunger and starvation. I mean, it speaks for itself. That's how bad it gets. And then there are poor government plans and policies. A policy is a plan or an action that has been set in place to be implemented. On the context of this motion, it will be on matters climate and the impacts of climate. For you to understand what a good policy, for what a poor policy is, you must first get what a good policy is. A policy is supposed to cover these major aspects. Define the problem. Gather evidence. After we've gathered the evidence, we're supposed to table the facts down. We are going to educate the public. And then we are going to make solutions we're going to strategize solutions that are supposed to anticipate the social response of the people. Now, a policy by facial view is not good until we get to the implementation and execution. So if it fails to meet this, the policy is poor. And then you have human ignorance. This is simply the lack of knowledge by the community. The ones that will come after me will clearly elaborate how these increased impacts are due to the poor policies by the government and not human ignorance. Thank you.
First proposer, you have 3 minutes.
I am not here to play the blame game on whether increased climate change is due to general ignorance or by the poor government policies. I am here to give out the solution to the problem on which is the increased climate change, of which the problem is the ignorance by the communities. Increased climate change impacts in Kenya are due to poor policies and plans implemented by the government as opposed to general ignorance by communities. I strongly oppose this motion. Also, I am Judah Wema from Jamhuri High School, of course. on to the first thing, increased climate change. So what is climate change? Climate change is the long-term shift in temperatures and also weather conditions. What is implement? Implement is to put into effect. What is a policy? A policy is a course or principle of action adopted or proposed by an organization or individual. What's the government? Because it is an essential word in this motion. A government is a group of people with the authority given by a country or state to implement certain particular ministry in an office. Ignorance obviously is the lack of knowledge or information. I repeat, ignorance is the lack of knowledge or information. So here we see that increased climate change impacts. So what are these impacts of climate change? Or the basic impacts of climate change is more frequent and intense drought storms. We have heat waves and rising sea levels, things that we'll have melting glaciers, things that really impact us. So on to my first point. Professor Judy Wakungu says that littering remains a part of Kenya's culture irrespective of social economy. National Environment Management Authority, which was an organization made by the government, banned the use of plastic bags. This is an important thing. Why do I say this? Well, you see, these plastic bags, when people litter or use these plastic bags, and these plastic bags get heated by the sun, or they emit greenhouse gases, which these greenhouse gases trap heat, thus increasing the temperatures, which increases the drought. So imagine the drought that we already have is even increased. So you can imagine what would happen. You see, the thing with climate change is this is a gradual change. You see, it doesn't happen like that and it's done. This is gradual change. You see, people don't listen to what these don't follow these things because of ignorance. And I said ignorance is a lack of knowledge. So because they don't follow this because they don't know. You see, they don't know. And with that, I end my submission.
Second proposal.
If you still believe that increase in climate change impacts in Kenya are due to general ignorance by communities as opposed to poor plans and policies implemented by the government, you quite simply don't get the bigger picture. So please, let me be the luminary in your land of darkness and shed some light upon you. Okay, Rosi Bani Misera, Moi Forces Academy. Now, going back to what their first speaker has says, these people don't follow because they don't know. Now, my question to you is, whose job is it to educate them? Isn't it the government's job? Poor policy, poor plan, poor implementation. You prove my point. Thank you. Now, on to my first point and what my very first speaker said. A policy may appear very brilliant at first sight, but what makes a policy is its successful, sufficient, and efficient implementation, integration, and execution. But that's something that our government clearly lacks. Let me give you some example of these poor policies. Now, let me take you back to the Moi era. Cut one tree, plant two. Seems pretty basic. Seems pretty good, at first sight. But then, ever since that time, up to 2013, our forest cover has dropped from 12% to 6.99%. Now, poor policy, poor plan, poor implementation. Another one. The NTSA banned the use of unroadworthy vehicles within the country roads and as well put in some policies to limit the use of private cars. They promoted, let's use these matatus, let's use these public service vehicles. But yet, these very same public service vehicles are the one emitting more carbon dioxide, more sulfur dioxide, more nitrogen oxide, and these other very harmful chemical gases that end up damaging the ozone layer at the end of it all. Poor policy, poor plan, poor implementation. Some of the buses that you used here are deemed unroadworthy vehicles as they emit a lot of greenhouse gases. It's the hard truth. Poor policy, poor plan, poor implementation. Now, let me take you to another thing. The Swiss government gave Kenya 5 billion shillings to plant 3 million trees over the course of 2019 and 2023. Keep in mind, this is not a loan, this is not a grant, this is a work of charity. So you can't complain that you don't have the funds, but what happened? 2019 up to date, no clear record has shown whatsoever what the government is doing to actually put these things and put this policy in place. Poor policy, poor plan, poor implementation. During this time, we have lost 48,000 hectares of forest cover. Poor policy, poor plan, poor implementation, poor points by my opponents. Let's wake up. Thank you.
Second opposer, the floor is yours.
Climate change deprives us and the environment of our liberty, but they blame it on our government policies. We live in a world full of injustice, but I am here to deliver justice because we are the only people with the tenacities to look them straight into their faces and tell them the problem is ignorance by the communities. Good afternoon, assalamu alaikum. My name is Waya Jeffrey from the great Jamhuri High School, and I'm here to strongly oppose the motion that states increased climate change impacts in Kenya are due to poor climate policies and plans implemented by the government as opposed to general ignorance by communities. In short, I'm here to tell you that it is general ignorance that increases the climate change impacts. First speaker quoted the daily newspaper, please value a 60 bob when you buy a newspaper. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the headlines of the 25th May 2015 daily newspaper. The headlines read, general ignorance to blame for continued assault on the environment. And the second speaker asked, whose job is it to educate them? Well, I'll get there. See, in one of the policies by the government, it is the mainstream climate change adaptation in education, formal, informal, and training. They provide quality education through policies and forums such as All Kenyans through the Universal Education and Education for All. Ever heard the saying that you can take a cow to the river, but you cannot force it to drink the water? Gentlemen, one of the great philosophers, Socrates, the Greek philosopher, said that he taught us the virtue of recognizing everyone's limitation. He said that wisdom is the value possessed and it is manifested in the recognition of our own ignorance. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we have the policies that are implemented, such as the National Climate Change Framework Policy Act about energy. This proposal is to enhance the implementation of an energy generation mix plan that will increase the resilience of the current and future climate variability and problems. What are some of the projects set up? We have the geothermal power in Olkaria, Menengai. Remember, climate change is a long-term shift. Therefore, we do not expect an instant solution. We need also to give these policies time because they are to be manifested by the Vision 2030. So you can look for me in the next 8 years and then we can put this up for debate. We had the Mashujaa Day celebrations. Our own president suggested that we plant at least 100 trees. If by now you have considered that or you have even thought about that, please raise your hand. I thought so. That is Moi forces. You are the only people who think to have thought of that. That is ignorance, my people. That is ignorance. And that is the problem we are having. Ladies and gentlemen. Now we have the National Water Master Plan. My time seems to be up. We'll meet in the reply speech. Thank you.
It is now time for audience questions. Policies versus ignorance. Do we have a question for the proposers?
The second speaker, you spoke of the policies during the Moi era. Which policies have come up during our era? You've not vividly explained and expounded on your point on the current policies that are put in place by the government. Would you please quite explain that furthermore?
Do we have a question for the opposers?
My name is Prince Roy from Upper Hill School, and I had a question. Can you please elaborate further on the things that bring out this, the ignorance in our people?
Third proposer, the floor is now yours.
Increased climate change impacts in Kenya are due to poor climate policies and plans implemented by the government as opposed to general ignorance by communities. Yego Nehemiah from Moi Forces Academy, and I am here to strongly propose on this motion. To your question, how can we account for ignorance in the age of information? Well, data portal of 1st February 2022, 42% are currently knowledgeable on current affairs while 58% are not. This is Kenya. And among that 42%, we can say that roughly half of them are misinformed. They do not have the right knowledge on these climate impacts, and they do not have the right knowledge on the policies which are given by the government. And as our first speaker stated, according to the School of Policy, a good policy should define the problem, gather evidence, review the current policies, strategize on solutions that anticipate social response, and educate the public. If the government does not educate the public on these policies which they are putting out, the government is simply failing on the policy. The policy is poor. The government does not offer reasonable alternatives for the policies they are passing through. I will give you an example of charcoal. Charcoal in 2016, according to Kenya Forest Act of 2016, production of charcoal was termed illegal in Kenya. But they do not offer solution. As you all know, charcoal is 70% provider of energy in our homes. Without this charcoal, not many people will be able to heat water, cook food. In general, you get what I am talking about. So by cancelling charcoal or implementing a ban on charcoal, what does this leave the community with? Alternatives which are not quite economicable to these people, which is not very applicable. Currently, 51% of Kenyans are living below the poverty line. This means that someone in the rural area earns less than 3,000 and someone in the urban area earns less than 5,000. So the solution after banning charcoal they offer us is gas. Well, gas is not, it's very expensive to say. Currently, a 6 kilogram gas goes for roughly 3,700 shillings. So how do you expect this person who is in the village to be able to buy this gas? If the government does not give you an equally possible solution after banning the thing you are used to, then it makes the policy poor. Ms. Kanyiva Muindi, a research officer with the African Population and Health Center, there are more than 16 organizations tasked with managing charcoal in the country, and this leads to confusion, with other areas saying that selling of charcoal is illegal. No, making of charcoal is illegal, while selling and using of charcoal is legal. This identifies that the government policies, they don't have effective implementation because they are giving several people this opportunity to implement, and this causes confusion in the community. With that, I rest my case.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to make your case.
My elegant name is Roy Bong from the great Jamhuri High School. Yeah, saddened by questions asked, but I have no choice but to answer them. Beginning with one, it was asked about information. Well, you yourself know that you ought not to release waste from industries into rivers, cut down trees. That's information you know, but you choose to ignore. That's what you're talking about. I want to talk about manufacture of goods. You see, emissions and mostly burning of fossil fuels to produce energy in making of cement and iron. These industries are the same ones that emit these gases and release harmful substances into our very own Mother Earth. That is ignorance. There are policies protecting them, but we choose to ignore them. Simple. Now, let me talk about ground rules. You see, my sons, see, my sons, ground rules are set, but my sons here are disobedient. And they represent the very many disobedient citizens that we have out there who ignore these methods to reduce our impacts from climate change. Simple. Now, another thing, for strategic ignorance of climate harm to exist, people must choose to ignore costless information on climatic impact. Simple. Again, just maybe you can take a pen and write this down. Do you know what you eat, my hungry opponents? How much you throw away, all that contributes to greenhouse gas emissions. You're not writing? Policies and plans are set. They are set, we agree, they are set, that's true. But listen, why are there no changes? Because we don't listen, we ignore. What is to ignore? It was told here earlier. Simple. You see, finally, productions of emissions. Oh, actually, simple again. You talked about NTSA and all that. You talked about unworthy road vehicles. Yeah, that's true. Even those drivers choose to ignore the rules and drive them on the road. Simple. Thank you.
Proposition, you have 1 minute for closing remarks.
Wayne Dacia for the final time today. Opposers, where are your ears? I clearly stated ignorance, lack of knowledge. It is not the aspect of considering to do it or not. So, my father, understand the definitions before you raise your argument. And as you tell me to spare my 60 bob on the newspaper, spare me your cliche arguments while bringing arguments having not understood the motion. A question was asked, whose job is it to educate the public? The answer is the government. How does the government educate them? With their policies. We stated the principles of a policy. You define the problem. You gather evidence. You educate the public. You strategize on solutions and you implement it effectively. The fact that the people lack the knowledge proves how ineffective they are. The policy is flawed. Do you know what you call a flawed policy? A poor policy. With this, I am done.
Opposers, 1 minute to wrap up your argument.
Good afternoon, assalamu alaikum. Once more, it is I, Wahia Jeffrey. It's lunchtime. Do you know what I'm about to serve them? The truth sandwich. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, do you know the paradox to this situation today is that I came in as a Jamhuri student. I will leave as a teacher from St. Paul's University. And do you want to know why? Because I've got an ignorant student to think about our policies, our government policies. You see, we did not talk about charcoal, but he got to think of it. He got to think. He said that we offered gas as a solution. None of us offered gas as a solution. We offered wind turbines. We offered geothermal power in Turkana. The second speaker stated that in 2022, it shows that our people are not educated, our people lack the information. You see, these policies started being implemented from 2014. So this is not a current affair, it is actually a problem that has been with us, and it is because of their ignorant nature that we have the impacts of climate change. And with that, I rest my case.
I'm Clay Codex from the Nairobi School. I'd like to give props for both teams. This was such an interesting debate, but clearly we know the winning team. Thank you all for your time, and I've learned a lot from all of you.
And I would like to comment that policies are there, but they're not being implemented by us citizens. So it is by ignorance. Thank you.
And I think from the judges' table, so far, the debates that we've seen, this is one of the most quite fiery, if I may use that word. And I want to appreciate that all of you put up a spirited fight. And so when such a debate is good and the content is good because you give very valid points out, of course, time was not on your end, we now start looking keenly into deeper details. For example, MFA at the start, I think you want to borrow from what Jamhuri did, especially from Judah. I think I'm addressing Wayne, that you can be able to summarize as much as you can the key terms, all right? Key terms. For example, there's some words you don't really have to define, all right? So for Judah as well, government. I mean, you're talking about government. We don't need to define government. Everybody knows that those are more general terms. So look for the key terms so that when you're defining, you just get in that. So MFA, the defining terms, just summarize so that you're at least able to give 2 or 3 points. But at least you ended well by saying my other colleagues will now give us the points. But we would have wanted you as a first speaker to quickly define as your role and give your first submissions. On the other end, make sure you get the key terms. But overall good in terms of explanations. What I must tell you though, Judah, learn how to close. When you see Wayne cut short by the bell, he ends very well by saying my other team will do that. When the bell goes on you, you almost lose it, okay? So that is looked at. When we come to the second speakers, 2 things. One, excellent cross-examination for you, Miss Sarah and Geoffrey, and excellent ways of delivery. I think for you, Miss Sarah, I still remember the song. Do you guys, can you help me? It was poor policy, poor plan, and? Poor implementation. Poor, wow. You see, even they know it's like a song. You can be a good teacher. We need to talk about that. Anyway, Geoffrey as well, well done. I love the fact that I still remember your truth sandwich. Now, Nehemiah, good answers as well from MFA. I think I love the fact that you came and gave your answers well. What I can advise you when it comes to speaking as much as you want to do, shorten your sentences. You had long sentences and you can manage to shorten them. For example, to say to be able to buy, you can get a word like to afford and you're gone. Get? So you can say as many things as you can because you could tell time was not on your end. Roy as well on the other end, I felt like you're a father to us as you have been referred to. But it's just a unique style that you have. I like it. I mean, it's everybody has their own way of delivery, but well done as well. You understood your role and delivered to your team. Let's wait for the results.
Wayne and Judah, as the first speakers, you really did a good job in trying to ensure that we understood the motion. You had done a lot of research. You helped us understand what the motion was all about. Unfortunately, the time was not enough, but I know you'll check on that next time. The second speakers, Miss Sarah and Geoffrey, that was excellent. You really worked hard to convince the audience, especially Miss Sarah with the poor policy, poor plan, poor implementation. Quite catchy. Congratulations on that. Geoffrey, of course, you tried to show us how ignorance is the problem. Yegon answered the question really well, but I feel you could have given more examples. Roy, you got our attention. I like how you inserted some humor to execute your presentation. Excellent job.
Moi Forces Academy gathered 75%. A round of applause for them. And Jamhuri High School, 76%, making Jamhuri High School the winners of this debate. Today, the debate circle is not just the home of high school debates, but the home of information as well. I am sure we have learnt a lot, and if you'd want to keep learning a lot, do keep it Debate Circle. But from me, Stephanie Oshira, your host, and us here at the Debate Circle, it is goodbye until next time.